So we're just changing people here. And our next speaker is going to be Mr. Dale Beesley, who is the Statutory Director for the AISH program and the Acting Executive Director of Financial Supports with the Alberta Ministry of Community and Social Services. I know many people online watching today are not in Alberta. We've got people tuning in from all across Canada. So some of the things that Mr. Beesley might say might not be applicable in all provinces. But since we're in Alberta, we're going with Alberta as, I guess, one example of what the provincial disability programs offer.
So I'll begin. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'll try to, the presentation I'm providing today, I'm trying to keep it as high level as I possibly can. If my head seems to be going down, I'm just reading off some of the notes. But this is a very generic general overview of the AISH program and some of the recent changes that have come about. And I did receive some questions prior that I do have the answers to, so I'm more than happy to do that after I go through my presentation. So to begin, the AISH program provides a financial assistance, which is a living allowance, supplementary assistance, which is like child benefit or personal benefits, and health-related assistance, which are health benefits. AISH has one of the most generous income support programs for persons with disabilities in Canada. The program is legislated. That means the basic rules that govern the program cannot be changed without going through the Alberta legislature. The authority for the program comes from the Assured Income for the Severely Handicapped Act, and it is also governed by regulations. In the Act and regulations, there's either the minister, which is Minister Sabir in Alberta, or me as the director. Currently, AISH serves over 57,000 clients with disabilities. Program growth over the past several years has averaged out to be about 5%. Last year, it was 6.4%. Some interesting statistics on AISH: 87% of the people are single, 6% are single parents, 5% are married without children, 2% are married with children. From a general age demographic, 38% of AISH clients are under 40, and conversely, 62% would be over 40. We do track disabilities at a very high level, and 45% of people have physical disabilities, such as arthritis, paraplegia, quadriplegia, or back injury. 31% have mental illness, and 24% have cognitive disorders, which is Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, or a specific learning disability. So as I mentioned, AISH provides a living allowance or a modified living allowance, health benefits, and a child benefit and personal benefits to eligible individuals. If a client resides in the community, $1,588 is currently the maximum monthly living allowance. If clients live in a facility, the maximum monthly living allowance is modified, and a personal allowance of $315 is provided. Living allowances are paid generally through direct deposit and on occasion check at the end of each month. For the next month, for example, the check for May will be deposited at the end of April. The health benefits available to the client, cohabitating partner, and dependent children include prescription drugs, optical, dental, diabetic supplies, emergency ambulance. And in addition, in Alberta, we have a program called Alberta Aids for Daily Living that provides some other types of supports. There is a copay factor to that, and AISH clients are exempt from paying the copay. In terms of personal benefits, they assist clients with one-time or ongoing expenses over and above the monthly allowance. To be eligible, clients and their cohabitating partner must have assets under $3,000. Example would be childcare, children's education, or infant needs. For program eligibility, eligibility is currently determined in 2 stages. How this 2 stages is under review right now, however, as a result of some Auditor General recommendations that I'll get into a little bit later in my presentation. But currently, applications are screened to see if they meet the basic eligibility criteria of age, which would be 18 to 65, residency, so residing in Alberta, and then they'll also be income and asset tested. AISH applicants need to also declare their income of their cohabitating partner when determining eligibility, and they must have assets worth less than $100,000. And I'll get into some examples of what's considered an asset and what isn't later on. The income is reviewed not only as part of the application process, but for ongoing eligibility to determine the level of livelihood or modified living allowance. The income for both the applicant and client and cohabitating partner are considered. While AISH keeps all their income from other sources, the AISH living allowance or modified allowance may be reduced depending on the type of income being reported. Based on regulations, income can be considered fully exempt, partially exempt, or deducted dollar for dollar. In addition, there are 3 types of income that AISH considers which are not reportable to CRA, which would be tax-exempt employment, self-employment, or pension income of a treaty Indian. The values of support provided by a sponsor of an immigrant and the value of an income deemed trust are also taken into consideration. Another type of income we have is called passive business income, and that is partially deducted from the living allowance at a rate for singles of $200 a month. First $200 is fully exempt, pardon me, and then it's taken at 25 cents on the dollar after that. A lot of, I guess, misconceptions about AISH is that AISH clients don't work. This is incorrect. Currently, 19% of AISH clients do report some level of employment income, and only part of the employment or self-employment income affects the living allowance or modified living allowance provided as an incentive to clients to work above the level that they can. The employment income exemptions are applied to net employment and self-employment income. To calculate the employment income and self-employment income, AISH uses most of the allowable CRA deductions such as income tax, CPP, employment insurance, business expenses, union dues, and all other mandatory deductions. For single individuals, the first $800 of net employment and self-employment is fully exempt. So the first $800 you get, you keep. As well, 50% of the amounts up to $1,500 are also exempt. So if you made $801, you'd give 50 cents. And the single maximum monthly exemption for singles is $1,150. For families, the first $1,950 of total net employment is fully exempt, as well as 50% up to $2,500. The maximum monthly employment income exemption for families is $2,225. So what does this all mean? How does it work? So in the illustrative example we have on the screen, Jen is a single AISH applicant and her net pay is $900. The first $800 would be exempt, and then 50 cents on the dollar for the rest of the 50 would equal $850. So the formula would be, she would have $1,588. She'd have $850 of income exemption amount. The net pay would be $900, so her living allowance would be reduced from the AISH perspective to $1,538. However, Jen will end up with $1,538 from AISH, $900 take-home pay, and $2,438 in pocket. The policy is, and there is no exceptions to this, that the more money you earn, the better off you are. For assets, the asset limits for both AISH, the asset limit for AISH apply to both the AISH applicant, their client, and their cohabitating partner. If both cohabitating partners on AISH together, they can have assets are $100,000 or less. The assets of the parents or dependent children of the AISH client are not considered. The amount is based on market value of any debt owed. Some assets that are not considered part of the asset limit, this is very important. One would be the principal residence, a vehicle or a second vehicle adapted for a disability, or a registered disability savings plan, which is also exempt under the program. So as this is a legislative program, clients are approved and denied either to be from application to being clients or from being clients for certain benefits. But most of the appeals relate to program eligibility. An AISH decision can be affected by many people, including the applicant, client, financial administrator, or third party. Such a person is referred to as an affected party. When a decision is made, the affected party is notified in writing of the decision and their right to appeal the decision. If the affected party wishes to appeal the decision, they must provide notice in writing outlining their disagreement with the decision and requesting that the matter be referred to an appeal panel. An appeal panel is a group of people from a community who do not work for the Alberta government. This appeal panel is a hearing which both the affected party and department can explain their case. The appeal panel generally hears decisions related to eligibility for AISH benefits or the amount of benefits. In some cases, the appeal panel may determine they cannot provide a ruling on the matter because it's outside of their jurisdiction. So most recently, we had a review by the Office of the Auditor General, similar to what I heard Chris talking about with CPP. And during that systems audit, which came out in, I believe, October, November of last year, the OAG completed a systems audit on the program and made recommendations to improving the program's accessibility, setting service standards and improving guidelines and eligibility procedures for guidelines, and improving how we report on efficiency. The Auditor General also made recommendations about making the program information more user-friendly and more accessible, simplifying the very complex AISH application form, and improving the internal AISH application process, so how we administer the papers. In response to the Auditor General's concerns, we are taking 6 actions. We are setting standards for application processing times. We're improving communications with applicants who are not eligible for AISH. We are supporting staff decision-making through enhanced training and supports. We are tracking and analyzing appeal panel decisions to acquire business intelligence. We are reviewing all eligibility policies, including the effective date of eligibility, and amending as necessary to ensure that the alignment to the legislation and to provide increased clarity and transparency. And we're also strengthening the internal oversights and implementing the ministry's internal audit recommendations. So when we get audited internally, we're making sure all those recommendations are considered and acted upon. We are also taking steps to improve to develop additional performance measures and enhance the public reporting outcomes to AISH. What we hope to do is be able to develop standards for application times, determination of eligibility times, commencement of benefit times, and then develop some more overarching recommendations around how effectively we're delivering program efficiency. We're going to make some additional measures as we go through the next couple years to identify the consistency of eligibility determination to ensure that everything aligns with legislation and policy. So with that, I'd be happy to open it up to questions. I have some questions that were provided to me before, so if they don't come up, I can always answer them as well, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions now. I have stopped sharing my screen.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
One of the questions that came in from an online participant, and it's one that I've been faced with many times and I don't know the answer, is what happens when people move provinces? So either when they move from, say, Alberta to another province, or move from another province to Alberta, and say they're on a provincial plan in the other province, is there a waiting period when they move to Alberta, and is it automatic, or do they have to go through the whole application process?
Unfortunately, yes, they would have to go through the whole application process. AISH is somewhat of a unique program to Canada. Other provinces, such as Ontario, for example, have the Ontario Disability Supports Program, which is sort of a fourth stream of their income support or welfare type program that they have. AISH is its own program that stands alone, so eligibility would have to be re-established in another province. However, if you're on AISH and you are moving to another province, we do provide some general level basic information. But if you're moving to Alberta from BC or Ontario or Saskatchewan or anywhere, you would have to reapply for the program. Typically, when someone comes onto the program, however, what they do is while they're waiting for the program, they will not be going without. They will typically go on to the Alberta Works Income Support Program, which is the welfare type program.
So if someone was moving, would you advise them to move and go on Alberta Works while they're waiting, or are they able to start the application process while they're still living in the other province?
They can start the application process where in the other province or whatever. I don't think they would be able to submit it, but you know, we are moving through some of the Auditor General's recommendations into online submission, online fillable submission. We're just not quite there yet, but they could start the process. But at the point where they weren't living here, they would still have to declare their residency, and if it was in another province, it wouldn't be considered eligible until they arrived in the province.
Okay. I think you addressed this, but maybe it was unclear to some people. So there was a question about your case of Jen, whether Jen could own a home.
Yes, Jen can own a home. You can own a home. The asset is completely exempt. Your principal residence.
It's really because there's you know, when I first sent the questions out to the speakers, I put out the idea that hopefully today would bust some myths. And that's a myth I've heard from many, many people, that you're not allowed to own a home or even, say, a car.
Yeah.
So I've had people sell their vehicles.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is a myth. You're allowed to have a home, a vehicle, a second vehicle adapted for transportation. An example where it can get complicated is, say you have a home and your health is deteriorated and you're moving into another home or a long-term care facility. We even have a period to exempt the asset from cash until things are sorted out. I, as a director, do that. So, so there's lots of flexibility around that. But you could actually own a second home if you wanted, but the rental income, but that would be considered an asset. And if it's under $100,000, and any income that you would be getting from that, from rental income, would be treated as passive business income.
Okay, so you just touched on a question that's come up many times as well. People are worried that if they're on AISH and they sell their home, something bad's going to happen to that money.
No, we usually work with the families. Like, typically what will happen is if someone is selling their home, so say you sell your home and you're between homes, but now you have a lot of cash for that home, we will temporarily exempt that income until you can either buy another home, move it into some of the sheltered things such as RDSPs, what have you. But yeah, for the most part, we would work with them. At the same time, you know, after a certain reasonable period of time, depending on the client's circumstances, you can't have $200,000 sitting in your bank account. But if you do sell your home, typically to move into some other type of care, we do make arrangements for that.
And you've addressed this as well, but I think it's another thing people are really unsure about. So someone asked the question, what about someone who's bedbound, who can do a little bit of work from bed, but clearly isn't well enough to do that same work in an office setting? So my thought about that is, probably that person's not earning a lot of money, and it would probably be in Jen's situation where they could kind of supplement their AISH.
Yep. Yeah, because again, you can earn up to $800 free and clear. You can earn up to $1,500. The $800 to $1,500 is at 50 cents. So if someone's, you know, working self-employment and reporting it, $1,500 is not a bad amount to have before it's deducted dollar for dollar. So, you know, you take that on top of your AISH, it's pretty good. And as I said in the presentation, there's no scenario where the more money you make, you're negatively impacted. You're always, while there is, you know, that deduction from the earnings exemptions levels, you're still ending up with more money in your pocket in every permutation.
Okay, so we're back to the house scenario. What happens if a person on AISH inherits a house and is currently renting? Does that house become the principal residence?
In that scenario, it's a very specific scenario. It depends. Like, if an AISH client's parent passed away and you inherited the home, it went through probate, as far as an asset, there's probably a way you could ensure that it was the principal residence, and then you'd be paying rent in another one. But if the intent was that I want to move into the parent's home in that example, we would give a grace period while they got out of the other home or what have you.
Okay. I guess you didn't quite address this. So there's a very basic question. How can one be eligible for AISH? And maybe they're referring to the medical side of it here.
Well, I'll even talk to the legislation. So in the legislation, AISH is severely handicapped, which is an old archaic term, but it's just what it is in the legislation. Is that it's a severe and permanent handicap that impairs one's ability to earn a livelihood. So the program is both income and asset tested. You have to be a resident of Alberta. You have to be between the ages of 18 and 64 and 364 days. So it's tested from income and assets, as I said, and then after that, it's a medical eligibility is determined.
And how is that determined? I guess some people ask me, what should they put on their form? What's important information for AISH to know about? Well,
I think it's important to note that, you know, right now it's a two-part process, but we are going to be moving to a more integrated process. With how it is right now is what the applicant will be putting is all the all the financial information, all the household assets, that type of information. The medical form is completed by a doctor. So the AISH client would take the medical form, get it back from the doctor, send it to the AISH office, or the AISH office or the doctor would send it directly to the AISH office. So the client's or the applicant's accountability is to fill out all that tombstone information, demographic information, contact information, and income and asset information. The doctor would be filling out the medical.
And I'll ask you the same question that I asked Chris, because the same issue arises that some doctors don't fill out those forms very well. And then the person gets declined, and you look at the form and you can really see why, you know, there just wasn't enough information there to support the application. So I'm wondering again if there's any thought of offering training to physicians and maybe nurse practitioners who are filling out those forms.
Right. Well, similar to Chris's answer and Chris's audit by the Auditor General, we have reviewed and revised the application form to make it from a two-step procedure to an integrated procedure, and we're actually working with Alberta Health through the Alberta government through a group of physicians to revise the medical forms to make it easier to fill out, to more modernize it to some of the disabilities and ailments and handicaps that were not reported in the past that have been diagnosed or considered. So we are working very closely with the medical community, and we hope to have that out by the end of July.
We're just noticing there's a few more questions online. Is a person eligible for AISH if they're a full-time student?
Yes. Yeah, we have people that go back to school that are on AISH. Sometimes it depends. You know, it depends if they're going for scholarships or if they're on student aid. There could be some exceptions, but yeah, an AISH client can remain on AISH, can still receive their full living allowance, health benefits, and attend school, be it vocational or post-secondary.
And does AISH offer any support for people wanting to return to school or continue school?
AISH itself doesn't. However, through Alberta Education, there is student aid available to any Albertan, whether they're on AISH or not, to anybody on income support, whether they're on AISH or not. And in income support particularly, we do have a category for people called learners in that side of the business. But yeah, AISH clients can work through their worker and get referred to the Alberta Works program if they want to pursue post-secondary or vocational retraining.
Another question, once your application is approved, what is the start date for benefits, and do they backdate benefits, I guess, to account for the waiting period?
Yes, they do. So the typical journey onto AISH is someone would come in, say, from another province, come into Alberta, go into an Alberta Works or Alberta Supports office, say they require services and they may want to receive AISH, and they start the application. They will be given Alberta Works benefits immediately. And for the time it takes to get from to get to the AISH application being considered complete, and all the information is given in, there is a period, could be a 4 to 6 weeks between there, where it needs to be adjudicated by the AISH administrator, which are the people that adjudicate the files. If they're approved, it is backdated to the point where the application was considered complete, because it is on the onus of the client to provide the information. But if we have all the information and it's sitting around, yes, we do backdate. We backdate on average right now. We used to do it about every 6 months. We're down to 2 months. Our goal is to make it backdating 1 month.
Thank you. There's a question here about whether a person can receive AISH benefits if they have WCB benefits.
They can still receive AISH benefits, but the WCB benefits are considered a pension type income, and they'd be deducted dollar for dollar. But you're as long as it's not $1,589, if it's $500 for WCB, yes, you would still remain eligible on AISH. And say it was $588 for WCB, you'd get $588 from WCB and $1,000 from AISH.
Oh, okay. I've been told to read louder.
Me?
No, me.
Oh, okay.
No, me.
Okay.
Is there any provision for temporary unemployment? So say a person is going through surgery and will be out of work for medical reasons, but doesn't have, I guess, a permanent disability.
We have the Alberta Works Income Support Program for that. As I mentioned, AISH is, for severe and permanent handicap. It's not considered a temporary program. It is an assured income program, but the Alberta Works program would have that if the employer didn't have if the person wasn't on EI, if the person exhausted their EI, they would more than likely go through the Alberta Works program.
Thank you. Another question is, if a client is too unwell to respond to the 30-day deadline after rejection of AISH, is there consideration to allow their medical information, or do they have to reapply and start over?
We are revisiting the 30-day 30-day form. In my experience as a director, we had the 30-day notice, but in every case where it needed to be granted 100% of the time, it was being granted. So the argument was, well, why do we even have the 30 days? So through our new processes, we are looking to revisit that. And I'm not saying we want to eliminate it completely, because we don't want someone to have a completed application denied and come back 5 years later. So we're trying to just develop a reasonable time frame. And I believe as long as there's continued communication between the applicant and the program, it's usually okay.
Okay, I think there's just a couple more questions. This
Sure.
one you probably understand, but I don't quite. Is it true that non-taxable disability insurance do not form part of the claimant's income for AISH purposes?
So what was that? Non-taxable
Disability insurance.
Okay, I'm just going to go back to my notes if
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I have that exact scenario on hand, but to the individual, if you do go online to alberta.ca and search for the AISH program, or even just go into Google and put AISH policy manual, the actual policy manual is public and it would be listed there. So sorry, I don't have that exact answer for you, but the policy manual could, and if not, you could definitely follow up with me if you needed.
Okay, one last question.
Sure.
This is a bit of a longer one. Where a claimant settles a disability insurance claim against an insurance company for a lump sum, and I guess in the meantime, maybe they've gotten on AISH, does AISH ever expect repayment of the benefits that AISH paid?
No.
Does the claimant declare the settlement funds in the month they were received, and then as long as he or she meets the asset test?
That's correct, but the assertion that the question made is correct. So if you got an insurance settlement claim, it'll come in on the first month of income, and if it's under $100,000, you can stay on the program as long as your assets are under $100,000. But in cases like that, this is a good example of, so in that scenario, say someone gets $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, we're not going to immediately kick them off the program. I would temporarily, as the director, exempt their income for a period of time, because if they said, okay, well, now I've got this money, I want to buy a house, or I want to do this, or I'm going to do that, and we would work with them to get their assets under, and there'd be a temporary suspension. But if they said, I just want to have $250,000 in my bank account and for forever, then they would not meet the program eligibility. But we would work with the clients in those scenarios. We are also looking to modernize the income and asset policies for both income support and AISH, and we are looking at harm payments through insurance companies, settlements with governments. You know, we have examples where if someone got money from a settlement in the province of British Columbia, how is that treated as an asset in Alberta for our AISH program? So there's many different scenarios around that, but we are looking to modernize it to the best we can, and always take advantage of the flexibility of temporarily suspending the asset limit while people can get their life sorted out.
I think listening to you, Dale, I'm really impressed with the number of times you've used the word flexibility and trying to address people's individual situations. That's hopeful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, I guess one more last question just came in.
Okay, so would AISH accept a client who is severely disabled but is expected to recover after a period of several years, i.e. 5 or more?
Again, I go back to the definition of severe and permanent. If the doctor's report said they were going to be on, they're expected to recover in 5 years, under the legislation, they would not qualify. Someone can stay on AISH for 47 years, and not if they came on at 18, but not that that's the intent. But we have had people that have come on that have gotten better and have left the program, but the program eligibility does not work like that. It's considered to be a more longer term disability. But in that case, someone would probably be looking at the Alberta Works program and full benefits on there, which aren't as generous as AISH, but do provide the same level of health benefits, personal benefits, etc.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.